Welcome to Speak the Truth in Love, where we do speak the truth in love based on God's Word in Ephesians 4:15. We're speaking today from St. Simon's Island, Georgia on WCGA 1100.
And start over.
Okay, go ahead.
You didn't give me a cue. And
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Ready?
Yeah.
In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Speak the Truth in Love with Clint from St. Simon's Island, Georgia, where we do speak the truth in love based on Ephesians 4:15. In today's woke PC culture, there are many forces that want to stop free speech, especially for people of faith. Good men and women must be willing to stand up for their faith and be salt and light to preserve our freedom. True freedom comes from faith in Jesus Christ. We know in God's Word it says in John 8:32, the truth will set you free. Today I'd like to welcome you, friends, and I just want to remind you that I have recently written a book called A Place of Restoration, and I want to encourage you to think about buying that book. It's by Clint along with Michael Dowling, and it's on Amazon, and I want to encourage you to consider buying it. It's a lot about things I've learned in life and growing up in an incredible family and just the challenges you go through in life. And, of course, going through a difficult divorce and the reality of that and the challenges of what you learn post-divorce in a lot of cases. And I think it can really help people, especially men that are really contemplating about what's going on in their life and how the things that are going on from a work standpoint, career standpoint, and trying to get that proper balance and be the man of God God calls you to be. And especially, as I said, post-divorce, some of the things that really stand out to me that a counselor helped me with is the importance of showing consistent Christ-like love, caring for your wife's spirit, and not shaming her. And it's just an amazing thing that God allows a lot of times in our lives to setbacks or set up for comeback. And I just really do believe that a place of restoration, not only do I believe that St. Simon's Island is a place of restoration, but real restoration comes from faith in Jesus Christ. This week I was in Atlanta, to shift on you, and I was enjoyed time with family and friends, but one of the things that I also did is I attended North Point Church for a seminar, and I didn't stay for the whole seminar. I didn't have time. I had not planned for that, and it's a kind of controversial seminar because, again, Andy Stanley, who's taken the risk to do it, is what is going on in our culture, especially for people of faith, evangelical Christians that are committed in their family and their walk, and they love Jesus, and their families are being raised in Christian homes. Children are going to Young Life, they're going to Awana, they're going to, like in our community, Gathering Place. They're being raised right, but as they grow up, they sometimes get off track, and of course, they develop an affinity for someone who may be of the same sex. So they enter the so-called homosexual lifestyle and the LGBTQ plus, whatever they call it, lifestyle. And the challenge with it is just like anything. When you find yourself in that situation, what do you do? And I've found in my life coaching experience, I do a lot of life coaching, as you know, and I've found that I'm having more and more people that are coming to me with that struggle, where they have a daughter that's saying, hey, I've got affinity for, I'm not your little girl anymore type thing. And we know that all of things start with, a thought, and a lot of things start with, obviously, sin. And we know that Romans, talks about those type of sins. We also know there are other places in the Bible. We also know that God He made us male and female in Genesis 1:27. It's very clear He made us male and female. But at the same time, it's just like me as a partier. When I started partying, my parents decided, they didn't agree with me. They were going to discipline me if I needed that in my particular case, if I was lying to them or something about it. But they made very clear where they stood on it. But the thing that really helped me in my life was their unconditional love. They kept loving me regardless of what was going on in my life, and I'm so grateful for that unconditional love. And so anyway, this seminar I went to, it started by something called Embracing the Journey. It's called Embracing the Journey. And it's by Greg and Lynn McDonald. And they were a couple they're from Michigan, and they now live in Atlanta. And they were in a situation where their son came out at about 17 years old that he was embracing the gay lifestyle. And they knew from a very young age that he was doing things that were just not normal for a young boy. And so they were starting to question, what's going on. And so, of course, what they did is they immediately came back with the Word of God, which is what is our natural tendency, because the truth will always set you free. And the challenge is, though, it always, we've got to be careful that we do it in love. And a lot of things, like in my own life, I understand what addiction's all about. I understand, in my case, it was marijuana addiction, so I understand the alcoholic better. I understand the person with an eating disorder. I understand the person that might be into porn or whatever. But this lifestyle is so unusual for us to be involved with or to see in our society in a normal, everyday walk, if you will. But again, it is becoming more and more prevalent for Christian families to have to face that reality. So what do we do about it? Where do we go with it? Yes, we want to speak the truth in love. We want to tell someone the truth. But there is still this problem, this challenge, that they're still in that lifestyle. It's not changing necessarily with us telling them the truth. And so what do? And this couple went through this journey, and like I said, they were doing everything they could to encourage their son to get out of that lifestyle. And in the meantime, they were embracing the reality of what they were facing and where he was. This book they wrote was called Embracing the Journey, Embracing the Journey. And I'd recommend it for a family that's going through this and trying to orchestrate and get through, guide their way through what the challenges are. But the book is, the title, subtitle is A Christian's Parent's Blueprint to Loving Your LGBTQ, now they say plus child. And again, it's not that a lot of these people that get caught up in this lifestyle, they say it's not really what they want to be. That's not what they want to do. And so, where's the balance? How do we properly walk them through it? And I got to tell you, as I started reading this book, it was like I say, just got it a couple days ago. And I want to make very clear that I'm not saying that I agree with everything in this book. I'm just saying this is the journey that this family went on. And if your family is having to face this, you're going to have to do it as best you can with a Christian response. And do you want a relationship with your children, or do you want to be right? That's the bottom line. And the fact of the matter is, and it's sad, as hard as it is in reality of life today, and again, I think about my own life. I have always had a serious wall toward a person that, especially a man, that was in that lifestyle. And years ago, I was in a very hard time in my life, right around 22 years old. And a friend of mine, a fraternity brother, wrote me a letter, and he said, you can stand there with that drink in one hand, that smoke in the other, and tell me you're happy, and I can tell you're not. And he said, if I was you, I would give my life to Jesus. And that very guy, he had gone to work for Delta, and I must admit, I'm really kind of sad that I would even say this, but it's true. A couple months later, I found out that or maybe a couple years later, I found out he had entered the gay lifestyle. And to be perfectly honest, I just didn't know how to handle it. So I really didn't handle it well. I just kind of rejected him. And that's not what we want to do. We want to embrace people where they are. We want to try to love them where they are. Yes, we can tell them the truth. They know the truth, because if they grew up in a Christian home, they know what the truth is. But when they're in that confused state, or that state of trying to figure out how they're going to move forward in their lives, it's just tough. And I'm not sitting here, like I say, and trying to change anybody's opinion on it or your mind about it. But I am saying this, that as a parent and as a person that knows a lot of people from coaching that are entering this phase of their lives, they got to ask themselves the questions. Again, do you want to have a relationship with your child, or do you not? Do you want to be right, or do you want to love them with Christ-like love and show them unconditional love? And that's the thing that I got to encourage you to do. I want to encourage you to show them that Christ-like love and try to be Jesus with skin on. And again, I think about any rebellion that we've been through, There's just so many different types of rebellion, and some of them are lesser known to us than others. And I just want to encourage you, but with some of these statements. But they start this book out with some pretty emotional things, and basically it just starts out with Greg Jr., who's the one at 17 that came out, and now I believe he's in his early 30s. But he said, "Dear Mom and Dad, thank you my entire life that you have stressed the importance of good manners, social etiquette with me. While I was little, you taught me to say please when I asked for something, and thank you once I had received it. Now that I'm fully grown adult, I realize I haven't always used my manners when communicating with you. Please allow me to properly thank you for everything you have done for me and everything I know you will continue to do. Thank you for sharing our family story with others. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for building bridges between the LGBTQ community, their families, and God. Thank you for your boldness to speak out against things that you refuse to accept. Thank you for your bravery." And those are just a few examples of things that he said to his parents. And I'm going to read more of them. We're going to take a break here in just a second. But again, I just want to ask you to have an open mind about some of the things I'm saying. I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I'm not saying I agree with everything I'm going to read to you today. But I am saying to you that there is a time where we have to love people unconditionally, even though it can be very hard sometimes, and they can be in a very tough place. So this is Clint Day from Speak the Truth in Love at 1100 a.m. from St. Simons Island, Georgia. We'll be right back. Okay? All right, ready? Welcome back to Speak the Truth in Love with Clint Day from St. Simons Island, Georgia, 1100 a.m., and it's so good to be with you today. I'm reading from a book called Embracing the Journey by Greg and Lynn McDonald. It's a Christian parent's blueprint to loving your child, your LGBTQ child. And I went to a seminar recently at North Point Church, controversial. A lot of people misunderstood what Andy Stanley was doing there, but coming away from that, I have a new perspective. I haven't changed my biblical worldview, not at all, but the bottom line is I have a new perspective about how to communicate with people that are caught up in this lifestyle, and I'm using that term, caught up. Some people are living seemingly happy lives in that lifestyle. But let me read some more of what Greg wrote to his parents. "Thank you for making me stubborn. If I wasn't stubborn, I doubt your ministry or this book would have ever happened. Thank you for not letting my abrasive words discourage you. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for loving me in spite of my numerous faults. Thank you for loving me and my sister equally. Thank you for not giving up on having a relationship with me. Thank you for not kicking me out of the house once you learned that I was gay. Thank you for removing fear from the equation within our relationship. Thank you for not trying to change me. Thank you for not sending me to gay conversion therapy. Thank you for no longer attempting to pray the gay away. Thank you for accepting me as I am. Thank you for never treating me like I was an embarrassment to our family. Thank you for teaching me how to treat others with respect. Thank you for demonstrating your compassion for others every day. Thank you for giving me an empathetic heart. Thank you for going to places and meeting people who are different from you. Thank you for being slow to judge and quick to listen. Thank you for reflecting your faith in a positive light with my friends. Thank you for acting as surrogate parents to my LGBTQ friends who years later still refer to you as McMom and McDad. Thank you for continuing to be McMom and McDad for people who are connected to the LGBTQ community whom I've never met. Thank you for welcoming people I love into our family. Thank you for putting me in contact with all the pastors and counselors who reassured me that it was okay that I'm gay and a Christian. Thank you for encouraging me to use the gifts that God has given me. Thank you for always being my biggest cheerleaders. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of your ministry. Thank you for praying for me. Thank you for encouraging my spiritual growth. Thank you for your continued love and support for me. Thank you for making me the man I am today. I pray that God will use your story to mend broken relationships. I pray that God will bless your efforts to help heal other hurting families. I pray that God will protect you from people who may be angered by your ministry and your story.
I pray that God will soften their hearts and open their minds. I pray that God will shield you from my misguided hatred. I pray that God will not let you become discouraged. I thank God that you are fighting the good fight. I thank God that our relationship has been reconciled. I thank God for you, that you are my parents. Love, Greg McDonald, Jr. And again, guys, again, it gets emotional because you think about any of that and the challenges they're going through. And I just think about, and like I told you earlier, in my life of being rebellious as a teenager and the partying and doing things that I knew I shouldn't be doing, and yet my parents still loved me unconditionally, no matter what my sin of choice was, if you will. And so I am just so grateful that, we have to learn, we have to go through life, and through our pain a lot of times, the greatest results happen. And I'm encouraged by, again, the reality of this life that we live, that we've got to love people where they are and love them into the kingdom. And my mom has always been a very good example of that, and I am so, so grateful for that encouragement. And one thing, again, this book talking about embracing the journey, they talk about, for most of their lives, we lived near Lake Michigan. We both grew up playing in the water, and we had our family. We spent countless weekends and summers breaks in Harbor Springs, a quaint Norman Rockwell-like community tucked away along the lake's northeast shore. As Gordon Lightfoot says, Lake Michigan's islands and bays are for sportsmen, and so we kept a boat there and spent hours on the crystal clear water. Again, they loved that water, and they talked about, spending time in the nautical miles or where they had to learn. And they also learned, going on in that reading, just skipping a few paragraphs. So that's pretty much how it was for us the next decade. We felt like we were on our own. The loudest voices in American evangelical churches, a place where we otherwise felt accepted and loved, and we grew personally and spiritually, were waging war against what they called the gay agenda. Their messages often ignored families like ours, the frontline soldiers in the pews. Even talking about our situation made a lot of our closest friends uncomfortable. Meanwhile, the gay community, understandably feeling attacked, alienated themselves from any conversation about God, let alone any genuine relationship with his followers for many of them. All Bible believers were hypocrites and bigots in their book. There we were in the middle of a storm without a map to help us love our son, love God, love the church all at the same time. We had no guidance for how to reconcile a lifetime of messages about the dangers of homosexuality with the reality of a person right in front of us. And as Greg Jr. likes to remind us, we made plenty of mistakes. If there was something that we could do wrong, we probably did it. But slowly, with a lot of hard work and God's grace, things started to change. We started to change. Our relationship with our son started to change. Today, the storms have quieted and the sun has come out. To our surprise, we realize that we have charted a map of sorts for those who have found themselves in waters after us. It started with an occasional phone call from a friend or whose child had come out. They needed someone to help them process how to respond. It grew to mentoring dozens of parents one-on-one and the facilitating small groups in our home, and then speaking to church groups and conventions around the country. We eventually started a ministry called Embracing the Journey, and now we share our story with thousands of people, from evangelical church leaders to gay teenagers, to help them better understand families like ours and embrace the entire bodies of believers. And so, folks, again, when you think about that, it's just a journey. We're on a journey. There's always going to be rebellion. There's always going to be people that don't think like us. And it's always easy to relate to something you can relate to because of what you've been through. And again, when I think about where people are, they really need to have Jesus with skin on. And how can we be Jesus with skin on, even though we may not agree with someone that's doing a certain act? And again, I think about that role model of my mom. I think we all have the praying grandmother, hopefully, and if we don't, maybe we can become that praying parent or grandparent for our children that may be in some type of rebellion. So this is Clint Day from St. Simon's Island, Georgia, 1100 a.m. We'll be right back. Okay, let's go back. Let's back. Thank you.
Welcome back to Speak Truth and Love with Clint Day. I'm speaking from a book, The Embracing the Journey, A Christian Parent's Blueprint to Loving Your LGBTQ plus child. And again, folks, this is not a topic that I would necessarily have picked. It's just, again, one of those things that I'm seeing more and more of. I'm having to talk to more people from a life coaching perspective. And it's about this book that this couple, evangelical couple, wrote. And their number one thing is this first chapter, part 1, is fear. And are you ? It was a sunny Saturday afternoon in 2001. The summer sun was warm around our home besides the river in western Michigan. Lynn and I were getting ready to leave for farmers market in downtown Grand Rapids, one of my favorite things to do on the weekend. But something kept bothering me. As Lynn gathered our shopping basket in the market, I asked her to wait for a minute. I want to check something, I said vaguely as I jogged down the stairs to Greg Jr.'s bedroom. A few weeks before, I had lunch with a good friend of mine, Dan, who was a pastor. We met every Friday for years in an accountability relationship. Dan had recently confided that he found his teenage son, who was about the same age as Greg Jr., was looking at porn on the internet. The thought had been nagging me ever since that time. Surfing the web was still a relatively new idea back then. But I kept thinking about the desktop computer Greg Jr. had in his room, which we bought so he could do schoolwork. Was he using it for anything else? This was the best chance I had to check it out. Greg Jr. was at work at a server at a local restaurant, and Lynn was distracted. I didn't want to worry anybody about what I was doing. I sat down at my son's desk and found the computer was already on. Dan had explained to me how to check a browser's history to see where the website my son visited, and there it was. The idea of my 17-year-old son looking at porn didn't shock me. I've been looking at porn myself since I was about 8 years old, when I snuck up behind my dad's recliner one night and discovered what he had, a Playboy tucked inside the oversized magazine he was pretending to read. Once I knew what I was looking for, it wasn't hard to find his whole stash of magazines. I shared them with friends, and then I was old enough I bought them on my own. 30 years later, it was a temptation that still followed me. But this website wasn't the kind of porn I was used to. There were 2 men on the screen and no women. A vice closed around my heart. My son, my only son, whom I'm crazy about, was looking at gay porn. And he was doing it a lot, based on what I was seeing in his history. Slowly, reluctantly, I called for Lynn. I think she could see in my face before I said the words. Greg's been looking at porn. And that second, as I looked at my husband's, and this is Lynn writing, that the first part was Greg, the husband. Now this is Lynn, the wife. And that second, as I looked at my husband's pain-filled expression, all I could think was, let it be a woman. Don't let it be one of those websites. Yes, my first thought on hearing my son was looking at porn was a hope that was just heterosexual porn, which tells you, I guess, that the news that our son was gay wasn't a total surprise. But we'll talk about that more later. Greg stepped away from the computer, and I saw the screen. There weren't women. I knew what I was looking at, but I still tried to deny it. Maybe it was an accident. I started turning to my husband with tears already forming in my eyes, begging him to get me out of this. Maybe it was one of Greg Jr.'s friends who came over and used the computer. Please, Jesus, let it be someone else's kid. Greg didn't answer, but from his expression, I knew that wasn't it. Maybe, but I was already run out of all maybes. My sweet, sensitive, tender-hearted boy, my artist, always surrounded by gorgeous girls but never dating them, had been hiding something from us, something I'd been told could cost him his soul. The tears were falling heavy now. What are we going to do? I whispered. We stumbled in one of the most pivotal moments of the parenting that we could ever have. The kind that can define or break a parent-child relationship for years to come. Every parent has dreams for their child. We stare into the infant eyes and try to imagine this little human as an adult. We picture sports games, first dates and graduations, weddings and grandchildren, but things rarely play out just as we imagine they do they? There are calls of the principal, medical diagnosis, failed tests and tryouts, personality conflicts. A grandchild is born before a wedding. A graduation never happens. Sometimes a child's dreams or desires carry them far from home, either physically or spiritually. Between 3 and 20% of parents in the United States, depending on which surveys you believe, will, like us, need to adjust to the idea that the person our child dreams of dating or marrying is probably not the gender we imagined them back when they were babies.
And at last, another 1% of parents will learn their child experiences gender dysphoria, which means that they will look in a mirror. The gender of the person they see doesn't match the gender they feel they are emotionally and psychologically. These are pretty big dreams to adjust. Christianity and Western cultures put a lot of importance on a person's gender and sexuality. The first words we hear when a child is born, it's a boy, it's a girl. And from that moment, certain expectations are set. So even for liberal, progressive parents, discovering that my child is gay or my child is transgender can feel at first like someone pulled the rug out from under them, because it pushes them to see their child through a lens they didn't have before. And for those who live as traditional families, attend traditional churches, and surround ourselves with traditional family values, finding out that our child is gay or transgender can feel like a major earthquake. And folks, again, that's a dad and a mom perspective, and that's one thing I do like about this book. I've not read it all myself. I've reviewed it, and they give a perspective of the mom and dad, and they keep going back and forth, and sometimes their son will interject some thoughts, or at least they'll quote him. And I just want to tell you, again, it's not something that anybody would expect. It's like they said, you have certain dreams for your children, and sometimes, as we know, those dreams don't happen. Someone may move away. Someone may go to a college you don't agree with, or they may make a decision for a job that you don't agree with. It just, who knows what it may be. They may reject Christ, clearly, if you're a Christian family. And so what we got to do, in my view, is keep loving them unconditionally, because, again, if we don't have a relationship with them, we have no influence. We don't have to agree with them, but it's important that we maintain that relationship and love them the best we can right where they are. And I encourage you to do that. So we're going to take another quick break. This is Clint Day from St. Simons Island, Georgia. We'll be right back. Thank you, sir. Okay. All right, let's go.
3, 2, 1.
And moving on in this book, Embracing the Journey by Greg and Lynn McDonald, A Christian Parent's Blueprint to Loving Your LGBTQ plus Child. It can be a controversial book for a lot of people, but they're telling their journey of what happened when they found out. And I'm hearing, again, folks, more people, their children or their grandchildren are finding themselves in these choices in this society today. And are we going to love them where they are and try to have a relationship with them? Or are we going to preach the truth? Preach the word of God, preach the truth. We want to tell the truth, and I'm 100% for that. But again, is it more important to be right, or is it more important to have the relationship? Because if we don't have a relationship with them, it's hard to influence them. Even, again, in the controversy of their own children, however they get them, the new ways that science helps them do that. And again, if you want to have influence on those grandchildren, the only way you're going to be able to do it is for Christ, that is to be involved in their lives and try to help be around. Again, they're talking in this part of the book about page 86 about how they were talking to their Bible study, for example. After we told our Bible study, we gradually told others it seemed appropriate. Not everyone around us offered unconditional love and support. Some people seemed uncomfortable, especially church friends and some family members who had spent the last decade hearing the same Christian media message as we did. We noticed that some friends who used to hug Greg Jr. when they saw him now literally kept him at arm's length, as if he had some kind of contagious disease. Others stopped talking to him altogether, as if he had died. It was frustrating and sometimes infuriating to watch. Here we were, people who said they loved us, but they didn't see the best way to love us was to love our children. I have given my eye teeth, or all my teeth for that matter, to have just one person from our church family take Greg Jr. by the hand and say, I just want you to know that I love you, I don't judge you, I'm here for you anytime. Martin Luther King once said, in the end, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Let me read that again. Martin Luther King once said, in the end, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. That turned out to be painfully true. With just a few exceptions, the silence that surrounded our family during Greg Jr. Sr. was deafening.
Lynn and I probably confided our situation with a dozen people we knew well. Between them and the families at the school, we were sure that our news had spread through our church congregation and local community. Grand Rapids often felt like a small town where everyone knew everyone's business. But with the exception of a few close friends, almost no one sought us out to ask about what we were going through. In defense of our friends, I always understood that their silence wasn't the same as condemnation. Most people in our community had just no idea what to say. Homosexuality isn't a topic that people in circles like to talk about, at least not in personal, compassionate, vulnerable ways. Our friends like us had heard the impassioned rants against the agenda of the liberal elite homosexuals, but they probably had never loved an openly gay person, either much less heard their story. Plus, it was not easy to enter someone else's life when they're in turmoil. Back in the 80s, Lynn and I had trained to be deacons in our church. One of the things that they taught us is how to act when we represented the church at funerals and hospital visitations. In your presence, that's what matters, not what you say, the pastor said. In fact, he told us to say that it was better for us to not say much than to offer answers to difficult situations. A hug and an "I'm sorry you're going through this" would be plenty. Now it was me facing a crisis, and I felt very much alone. Our church community silence was devastating to me. And again, folks, I'm not, facing the reality. I mean, I am facing the reality of all this because it's just becoming more and more common for people, again, that I'm trying to coach, family members, things I'm seeing. And it gets closer and home to every day. It really does. And I want to keep certain people's privacy in mind when I think about certain things. But I think about people like my friend that's a fellow life coach. He's the one that encouraged me to come to this. He told me about it. And he has a child that's going through this. And they're loving this person, this young lady through this. And that's what we got to do. We got to love them. Again, we don't have to agree with them. And he goes on in this book, page 89, as Pastor Andy Stanley says, the further away you get from a problem, the simpler it seems. But the closer you get, the more complex it gets. Well, we were right in the middle of a situation. We didn't have any answers, but others sure did, and some of the sharpest, most painful opinions came from those closest to us. I'd just come home from another long day at work when a phone rang. It was a family member who sounded furious. "Do you know what your son is saying about himself?" my relative demanded. Apparently someone he knew had stumbled across a website where Greg Jr. had publicly stated his orientation as gay. What made it worse was that Lynn and I hadn't yet told our families what we knew about Greg Jr. To be honest, we'd been procrastinating or outright avoiding a few conversations, including this one, that we anticipated would be difficult. As it turned out, we'd been right to be concerned. "You better get him under control," my relative snapped. That was all it took for his own temper to flare. I slammed down the phone and stormed away. Never mind that Lynn and I were desperately trying to control the whole situation, or not so long ago I'd said in no uncertain terms that I would, quote, "fix my son." No one else had the right to judge my family like that. That conversation shook me out of another layer of my fear and avoidance. In the years since, Lynn and I have met a lot of parents whose initial negative reactions to their LGBTQ child ran up against their parental protectiveness when their children were attacked. For example, I had a friend who works in the masculine industry. For years, he listened to coworkers mock and criticize the gay community, all the time knowing that his teenage son was gay. This dad never acknowledged his LGBTQ son to be his coworkers, deciding it wasn't safe for him or his son to be out. The father-son relationship, meanwhile, strained to the breaking point. But then the dad's mother, his son's grandmother, sent the boy a scathing letter, tucked it inside his birthday card. She basically disowned her own grandchild and talked about what a disappointment it was. It was devastating for the son, but it capitulated this dad into action. Today, he's a staunch and vocal supporter of his son, and their relationship has reached new highs. In another family, it was a nosy aunt who pushed the family to take a stand. After years of family gatherings with relatives asking her nephew loudly if he had a girlfriend yet or was he dating, the father finally pulled the sister aside and told her to stop with her question. because his son was gay and was going to stay that way. It was the first time he acknowledged it out loud to anyone. And again, folks, it's a journey that everybody has. You know, is our child going to stick with what they grew up in? Are they going to wander from it and have a different view? Or are we going to try to encourage them in their faith walk, and no matter what they choose and how they choose to live? And again, this is not an easy book to read, but I encourage you, if you have someone going through this or you're concerned about a family member, to consider buying this book on Amazon and reading it and understanding and passing on to people that are facing a similar type challenge. And I just, again, thank you so much for listening to me. This is Clint Day from St. Simons Island, Georgia, with 1100 AM. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. Final segment, right?
I'm not sure.
Yes, sir. I think it is.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
3, 2,
All right. Welcome back to Speak Truth in Love with Clint Day from St. Simons Island, Georgia. I'm here talking about a book, Embracing the Journey, A Christian Parent's Blueprint to Loving Your LGBTQ plus child. And again, I'm going to read the backside of this book. Greg and Lynn McDonald had never interacted with members of the LGBTQ community until they discovered their son was gay. And without resources or support, they had no idea how to handle the news. But even the earliest days of the journey, the McDonalds clung to two absolutes. They would love God and they would love their son. Embracing the Journey follows the McDonald's family transformational over 20 years from a place of grief to a place of gratitude and acceptance that led the McDonald's to start one of the first Christian ministries for LGBTQ children. Based on their experience counseling and coaching hundreds of struggling Christian parents, they offer tools to understand your own emotional patterns and spiritual challenges, helping you experience a deeper relationship with God while handling difficulties or unexpected situations that are out of your control. Written in an honest, reassuring, and reliable voice, this is a practical guide for parents and a roadmap to learning to love God, the people He created, and the church, even when they seem to be at odds. And again, Matthew Vines says, Embracing the Journey is an essential resource for Christian parents of LGBTQ kids. This book will have a profound impact on countless relationships between parents and their children, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. All right, I just wanted to read that back cover to give you an overview of what's going on. And I just go, folks, you know, anything we go through, it's up to us and how we're going to respond, how we're going to live, and through whatever we go through, we can live in a thriving way. Life does not have to be over because of things that are happening in our lives. We don't have to quit. And again, they have a study guide in the back of this book that helps, you know, ask questions, you know, like on fear and all the different things. So I would highly recommend it. But I just always like to kind of read. They have something they call the afterwards. So they wrote the book and then something they've written since then. So again, I'll just read that. Fast forward to today. As we write this, we're almost, and again, I'm not going to say I agree with all this, but I'm just saying this is where this particular family is, okay? Fast forward today. As we write this, we're almost 20 years into our journey as the parents of a gay son, and we're grateful to report that our family is closer than ever. In 2017, we sold our condo in Boys Town. We hadn't been able to visit as often now that we lived farther away, and Greg Jr. was ready to try something new. He moved to Atlanta, and for the first time since they became adults, both of our kids now live a short drive from us and from each other. It's such a blessing to be part of their everyday lives. We wish every family could have the kind of close, honest relationship that we do today. Our son, the same person who once said he felt like he didn't have parents, is now on the important part of our ministry. Greg Jr. travels with us to conferences, edits our blogs, posts, and keeps us informed about changes in culture and language. The world is dramatically different than it was when in the summer of 2001 when Greg Jr. came out, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community as accepted and treated. The AIDS crisis and the painful rumors that swirled around us back then are like a distant memory. Being gay is no longer something that people, especially young people, feel like they have to hide. Marriage is legal, society is a whole lot better, talking about homosexuality, and it's now tackling other issues like transgender identity. As parents, we celebrate that our son doesn't have to live in the shadows. But as Christians, our hearts still ache to see that the culture shift has left our beloved Christian community divided. Unlike the early days when we couldn't find a single book or resource to guide us, bookstores today carry a collection of personal narratives and studies from gay Christian writers, while events and social media connect thousands of LGBTQ Christians and broadcast their story. In the last decade, many evangelical pastors and leaders have supported including the LGBTQ community in their churches and make every person feel to be welcome to God's kingdom. Others have doubled down on those 6 verses in Scripture that seem to condemn homosexuality, going so far as that a Christian who supports the LGBTQ community are heretics out of God's kingdom. We're friends with people on both sides of the debate and with plenty of ourselves in the middle. We know that we all love Jesus and love the Bible. When churches started talking about the LGBTQ community, often denominations split, pastors leave, or church members do. As followers of Christ, we still have a long way to go to find unity, and thousands of families are caught in the middle. A Pew Research study says that 1 in 5 American adults would be very upset if their child came out as gay or lesbian. About 40% of LGBTQ adults say they were rejected by a family member or a close friend because of sexual orientation or gender identity. According to the best estimates from the National Alliance to End Homelessness, about half of the 1.3 to 1.7 million American youth who are homeless at least one night of the year are LGBTQ. We meet them every night in Atlanta, where we volunteer with a nonprofit, Lost and Found Youth, a homeless shelter specifically for these youth. The overwhelming reason for their homelessness is family rejection. Those numbers break our hearts and remind us of calling. We know how easy to rack in fear when in reality that shakes our foundational values. We know how parents love their kids and want what's best for them, and how easy it is to say and do hurtful relationship-breaking things in the heat of a moment. We've been there. But the people who we meet face to face give us hope that every day new bridges are being built between the LGBTQ community, their families, and the church. So let's end our time together with a story. While working on this book, we got a phone call from a woman in another state. Jackie found our website and was desperate enough to reach out to us, complete strangers. Her son is gay, and her husband, Bob, was mired deep in a place of fear. He wouldn't acknowledge their child. He wouldn't talk to his wife about what was happening. For 4 years, they had been keeping their family reality a secret from everyone. They hadn't told a single person, not a friend, not a family member, not a pastor. The secrecy shame was eating Jackie alive, and she started asking God to bring someone into their lives who could talk to her and her husband. She started randomly Googling and found Embracing the Journey. When she saw our video, she felt that we were safe. She asked if we could meet on phone, which we're happy to do. But as we listened to the pain in the woman's voice, we offered something else. If you ever come to Atlanta, we'd love to meet with you in person. It's a great city to visit, and we'll clear our schedule and have a chance to really talk. It's a sign of how much this couple was hurting that they agreed. Jackie and Bob set aside a weekend and flew to Georgia, and the 4 of us spent hours together, simply sharing our experiences. We didn't show up with a formula or formal program. We just listened and asked questions and prayed together. We assured them that they weren't alone, and there was a path, a place of fear to a place where their family can thrive again. Most of all, we offered without judgment for them, for their child, for the church community. We assured them in the words, by example, that they were feeling now was real. Life could be different. Someday there was hope. As Jackie and Bob both opened up, we see a visible change in their demeanors. The weight had been on their shoulders for a long started to lighten. Their family was no longer secret. They went home to face the next step on their journey with God, and we stayed in Atlanta close to the God who gave us love, knowing the phone would ring soon again. And again, folks, you just think about that story. You think about what's going on. We got to learn to love people where they are. We got to love God, love people. And a way we really do show someone that we love them is by sharing the truth with them. So, good friends, I'd like to say have a great day. It's been great being with you today, speaking with you from Speak the Truth in Love with Clint Day on WCGA 1100 from St. Simons Island, Georgia. And remember, every day is a God day.